Brand new reporting gives us an alarming glimpse into the world of Pete Hegseth, his relationship with extremism and violence, as well as the company he keeps. Just this morning, CNN unearthed clips of Hegseth on former House Speaker Newt Gingrich's podcast in the wake of the January 6th insurrection, peddling the completely baseless claim that leftist groups or Antifa staged a false flag operation at the Capitol.
And there are reports, in the New York Post and elsewhere, and just from, common sense, that Antifa folks took advantage of this to try to get to the front and try to agitate and create openings for themselves. They want chaos, ultimately. I could even spot it. You can see the helmets where there's a, Donald Trump bumper sticker on the back, quickly put on it so they could look like they wanted to stop the steal.
Again, and I know you know this, that is completely false. It has been debunked repeatedly, including by the outgoing Trump-appointed FBI director, Christopher Wray. Here's what he said just 2 months after the attack.
Has there so far been any evidence that the January 6th riot here, the insurrection, was organized by people simply posing as supporters of President Trump's?
We have not seen any evidence of that, certainly at this
Is there
stage.
any evidence at all that it was organized or planned or carried out by groups like Antifa or Black Lives Matter?
We have not seen any evidence to that effect thus far in the investigation.
And is there any...
No evidence. But whatever right-wing narratives there are to excuse or whitewash the insurrection, well, Pete Hegseth has been happy to give them a platform. On that same podcast with Newt Gingrich, Hegseth downplayed and justified the attack. It led to several deaths, with more than 140 police officers injured.
I talked to the people on the mall. I've talked to them a lot. Listen, they believe the election was stolen. They wish there were more recourses. They've watched what happens. They've seen stories be suppressed before Hunter Biden, during and after, unwilling to air anything. I mean, the amazing extent to which the media has now taken to taking the official line of secretaries of states or governors and saying, well, this has been fact-checked and debunked because the government officials are telling us that it's not true. When's the last time that's what the media was supposed to do? Reflect and project back upon the populace what government officials are saying because it enhances their narrative. It's unbelievable. So the mindset of these people was not overtly radical. It wasn't violent at all.
His sympathies for those responsible for what the FBI director calls an act of domestic terrorism, adding to the many questions surrounding Hegseth's views. It's worth remembering he has been dogged by questions surrounding his support for extremism. Multiple outlets revealed just last month that Hegseth was deemed a potential insider threat and removed from a National Guard mission protecting President Biden's inauguration when an intelligence officer flagged a tattoo on his bicep with a battle cry that had been brandished on banners by Capitol rioters. Okay, meanwhile, the New York Times has new reporting on the man escorting Hegseth on Capitol Hill. His name is John Hasenbein, a former Army Special Forces Master Sergeant who attacked a civilian during a training exercise in 2019. The New York Times reporting that he, quote, beat a civilian role player, kicking him, punching him, and leaving him hogtied in a pool of his own blood. The Army charged Mr. Hasenbein with aggravated assault and reckless endangerment. A military jury found him guilty of the assault charge in a court-martial in 2020. That's according to Army records. But the judge overseeing the case declared a mistrial after learning that a friend of Mr. Hasenbein had been talking to a juror throughout the trial, court records show. Hasenbein told the New York Times, I have no conviction, and I was honorably retired after 22 years of service. That's all you need to know. An attorney for a firm that represented Hasenbein said that he agreed to retire rather than face another trial. For his part, Hegseth is standing by his security detail. Hegseth's lawyer, Timothy Parlatore, telling the New York Times that Hasenbein is, quote, a victim of unjust treatment by a broken military justice system. And that is where we start today with NBC News correspondent Vaughn Hilliard, who is in West Palm Beach for us. Also with us, former U.S. Senator and MSNBC political analyst Claire McCaskill, the CEO of Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America, retired Army Captain Allison Jaslow is here, and president of Media Matters for America, Angela Corazon. It is good to see you all. Vaughn, let's start with you. And Hegseth's comments, things we have heard him say about what happened on January 6th. Does Donald Trump, do people in Donald Trump's orbit see Hegseth's support for the Capitol rioters as a plus rather than a demerit?
For Donald Trump, he wants to know with his incoming administration and chief among them, the individual who would lead his next Pentagon, the extent to which they would carry out the orders coming from the Oval Office come 2025 and beyond. And for Donald Trump, knowing Pete Hegseth was somebody who defended his actions, then President Trump's actions on January 6th, but also defended the rioters, the attackers, who went in and stopped the peaceful transfer of power. For Donald Trump, this is, of course, a key component in finding somebody who he is, little question, would be able to serve in a capacity that he would see as sufficient. Because for Pete Hegseth, not only noting and suggesting that it was an inside job, that there was Antifa behind that attack the day, we have known time and again that that is not the case. Even a recent DOJ IG report that came out just last week said that there were 4 FBI confidential human sources who were inside of the Capitol that day. But we're talking about thousands of attackers who were Trump supporters, individuals who have pleaded guilty and are even serving time for attacking the Capitol. And for Donald Trump, though, he has propagated over the years the idea that this was an inside job and that he had requested National Guard assistance that was denied, which, of course, is not accurate either. And so for Donald Trump, having Pete Hegseth, somebody who could potentially utilize the military for domestic purposes, as Donald Trump has suggested in the past he would seek to potentially do, this is a key litmus test in finding somebody who he had the utmost belief that he would carry out the duties that he would call on his Pentagon to carry out from the Oval Office.
Fawn, I did not tell you the accusations against Hegseth, they keep mounting. What is the thinking at Mar-a-Lago regarding Hegseth, his chances of getting confirmed?
At this point in time, Donald Trump, he was at the Army-Navy game on Saturday alongside Pete Hegseth, and he has stood by his side here. It was Matt Gaetz who ultimately heard several affirmative no votes that led him to drop his efforts to be the Attorney General in the transition team, is still suggesting that Pete Hegseth has not been given an explicit no from any Republican senator at this point in time. So they intend to continue to move this forward. Of course, these one-on-one meetings are important for him. And at the same time, Donald Trump has suggested that Republican senators up in 2026, like Joni Ernst, Bill Cassidy, Mike Rounds, they could all potentially face challengers, primary challengers in 2026 in this scenario that, in Donald Trump's terms, they were to unreasonably try to block any of his cabinet picks. So as of right now, there are no hard no's. And so at this point in time, Donald Trump and his transition team intend to proceed.
Right. I mean, there's Donald Trump himself, and then there's the hard push we are watching from broader MAGA allies to really get Hegseth into the Pentagon. Why make this the all-hands-on-deck mission?
For Donald Trump, this is a head nod to those who have affirmed loyalty to him and have given Donald Trump the word that they would intend to use their cabinet positions in the departments and agencies that they oversee to fulfill his orders. Donald Trump, I think we have to come back to during the campaign. I was told time and again that he would seek in 2025 to fill his cabinet out with individuals who would not be roadblocks to the executive use of power that he saw fit in his second go-around as president. He blamed in 2017, 2018, much of the slowness in being able to effectuate the change that he so sought on having individuals serve in capacities as, for example, Secretary of Defense, Secretary of State, as well as other top leadership posts for his inability to effectuate the change that he desired. And by the time they got to 2020 with loyal allies that he felt were properly in these positions, the pandemic hit, and he placed much of the blame for their inability to effectuate that change on the pandemic at that point. So he time and again said that he wanted to make sure that he surrounded himself by people that he had the utmost belief in. And these nominees who he has announced over the course of these last weeks, they represent that. And Donald Trump, true to his word, is standing by them to the very end.
Vaughn Hilliard live for us in West Palm Beach. Vaughn, thank you for joining us. Thank you for your reporting. Allison, I want to look at all of this in the aggregate, the things that Hegseth has said about January 6th, the people he has decided to surround himself with. What message does it send to our men and women in uniform?
I think a couple of things. First of all, there are very concerning aspects of Hegseth's character, which, as you've noted, are being examined in one light today, but there have been multiple examples of concerning parts of, who he is just as a person and who he would then be as a leader of our men and women in uniform. But I think the thing that gets not enough attention is his active lobbying to get convicted war criminals pardoned. These are not war criminals who somebody went after from civilian society, but they were convicted because men who served alongside them and saw the horrors of war with them said that they crossed the line. And you have Navy SEALs that risked their careers to make sure that justice took place and that we held those service members to account, which the military really does well. And if we're going to elevate somebody into the role of Secretary of Defense who seemingly thinks war crimes are okay, that's a big problem. That's a big problem, not just for our men and women in uniform, but for our national security.